Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Cabinet Vision Guy. In today's episode we're going to continue our series on JavaScript and we're going to do a little bit of a code cleanup before we move on to adding a bit more functionality in there. Now typically when we're writing a UCS we don't always know how the UCS is going to look until it's finished. Obviously we're exploring different things as we test our UCS to see if it works in different situations. We might add additional logic in there. And what I like to do is I either like to wait until the end and do a full cleanup of the UCS, or I like to do it sort of periodically as I'm moving through the UCS. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to head up to my UCSs and open up my code. And I'm going to start off just reading through the logic to make sure that A, I haven't made any mistakes, B, there's nothing obvious that I've missed. Sometimes again when we're writing UCSs we can get lost a little bit in the detail of what we're looking at and write some logical statements that could be cleaned up and could be a bit better. So I'm going to start off right at the top and I've got my variables declared up here and I'm into my first section, and then we're testing to see our lend and rend cabinet level attributes. To then use our left and right unfinished end or finished end pass to our end panels when we get in that object. And this is the first place that I'm going to start. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use something that I was reading about last night that's relatively new to me, and that is a ternary operator. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to return a value if something is true or false. So just like an if statement, but it means that we can write it in one line essentially. So what we've got is an example here where we're testing isMember and then we're returning either $2 or $10 depending on what we're passing to this. And this is something that we can build into our UCS just to take out an if statement. So what I'm going to do up at the top here is I'm going to turn the code that I've got into something that looks like this. So I'm going to copy this section here. In fact, what I'll do, I'll copy the entire thing and then just delete what I don't need to make sure I keep my original code. It's good to just do that in practice if you're going to start to modify your UCS, especially if you're cleaning up logic. It's good just to copy blocks over and comment out your original code and keep it in place just in case. Obviously for me it's easy because I've got the UCSs saved under different episodes, but for yourself it can be good to either take a copy of the UCS or just be a little bit cautious when we're editing and cleaning. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment out this for now. This section, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to include this in here, and now I'm going to include my operator, and I'm also going to include a colon, and I need the different value that I want to use. And what this is doing is it's now saying that the left end string should equal if this condition is true, or whichever condition I've put in my statement here is true, it's going to equal this first, which is the left unfinished end, and if it doesn't equal that, it's going to equal the left finished end. So this is really very similar to how this operates, but it means we can just include it in one line. And doing little things like this as we're moving through a UCS can help us keep clean code and make it a lot easier when we're going to be coming back to it. So I'm going to do that for the right end string as well, and again I'm just going to copy this entire thing and then just change it to rend, and then right unfinished, and then my right finished end. And what I'm going to do is just comment this out. And before I move on, I'm just going to go test that the changes I've made are correct. I think they are, yep. And hopefully we should see our side fillers in place, which we do. So if we head back into our UCS, we can then just look through for the next section. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to take this out. So reading through, we've got our variables up at the top, and then we're into our first function to essentially apply a connector to a part edge. Now there's one thing that I can see on here that I'd like to take out and make a lot more generic, and that's just the connector name that I'm using. And this doesn't affect how our UCS functions, but it does affect obviously if we're going to be coming back to this in, again, years to come. If I was to read through this, I would automatically presume that it was always going to be a graphics connector that's going to be applied, especially if I'm not familiar with this UCS. So it's good to just have a generic name in there for functions and things like that. So the next thing that I'm going to do is just come through and read through my section here. So we've got add connections to part. I think I'm fairly happy with everything that's in there. I've got my get set parameter down here. I think I'm going to make this one a little bit more generic in this function. So at the moment, what we're doing when we're doing the get set parameter, we're using the default parameter value. And if I just head over into the help file for a second, we'll see that when we're using set parameter, the default type that we're going to be using is a measurement type. So what I want to do is I want to make that a little bit more generic, and I want to be able to pass different types to this function get set parameter. So at the moment I can only get and set a measurement, but I'd like to be able to use a bool, for instance, to be able to have an on-off toggle switch that we're going to be using in later episodes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat for a second, and I'm going to copy this one and back into my function here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call this one p type, and I'm going to set the default myself, and I'm going to go value measurement. And what I'm going to do is then just copy this down here, and if we again have a look in the help file, we can see that when we're setting a parameter, the type itself is optional. Again, the standard is a value measurement, but we're going to just be able to pass that with our function. So I'm just going to put a comma in there and put p type. What I'm also going to do is again make these probably a little bit more generic, rather than using parameter name, parameter value, and then my description, which doesn't really fit in with my naming system. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put p name, p value, and then p description. And I'm going to put just pdesk in there. And then what we need to do is just make sure that we're referencing those correctly in our function. So the next thing I'm going to do is, as I move through there, see we've missed one here, p name, there we go, is I've got a section of code. Once I come into my try catch block, I'm then handling two choice lists, and rather than handle that through a function, I'm repeating the same block of code over and over again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build this one into a function as well. I'm going to copy my upper section here just to give me my layout, and just close it off with my brackets. So instead of get set parameter, I'm going to do get set choice list. And the idea being that for this function, we're going to return the value of the choice list itself. So what I'm then going to do is I'm going to copy this section here. And again, I'm going to leave this code in place at the moment. I'm going to comment it out in a second and just replace it and test my functionality as I go. What we're doing is, because we're changing a lot of things at once, it's really easy to make a mistake. And if you change 10 things and then have to find out which one of them's caused the error, that's when it can take us half an hour just to work through some simple logic. So with this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my p name and put that one in here. And I've got my value as well, which is going to be my choice list itself. And this one I'm going to leave, I think, no, actually I'll go for p type. But what I'll do is I'll set this one as a standard to integer, which I think it is for a choice list anyway. And then we've got our description as well. I think everything's set in there. So what we need to do then is just return the value of it there. So now what we can do, rather than having the two blocks of code here, we can just reference our function. So I'm going to start off, I think, with this one up here. It would help to start with the first one and just comment this out. And I'm going to comment this as well. Now what I'm going to do is just grab get set choice list. And I'm going to open and close the brackets. And then I can start passing my parameters to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to include my parameter name. So this one's pretty easy, I can copy that from there. Then I need my value, which is the choice list itself. and then I need the type that's going to go in, oh sorry, the description. There we go. And I think for this one it's just going to be an integer, so I'm going to pass nothing to that and let it set its own type there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head down to assembly level now and just check it and make sure this is okay. I'm just going to give it a visual scan to begin with. So fill aside should be okay. I think everything looks good. And I have made a mistake, but I've got me an error message to tell me what I've done. So my description is not defined. If I head into my UCS, that'll be on one of the functions. And we can see I've got my description there, but obviously I've changed this to a P description. There we go. And I'll just make sure I haven't made the same mistake down here. I've got everything set as it should be. I think that's correct. So with that set, what I'm going to do is head back into my UCS. And I'm going to leave this section commented out. I'm going to do the same down here and just comment this section. Remove my code. And where we're setting this new connection name, we're obviously using a choice list as well. So I'm going to use my get set choice list. And I'm going to open brackets again and just close that off. And I'm going to copy and paste the information here. So my parameter, or my CV attribute name, then the value for the choice list itself, and then I want my description, which is going to be this. And obviously I'm just using commas to separate the different arguments that we're going to be passing to the function. And for the last one on this one, because we're using a text choice list, I need to include that I want to be setting the type for this, and just make sure we've got get set choice list, and yeah, we've got the type set at the end. So I should be able to close my code down and head back in and see that I've got my filler connection. And what I'm going to do is just set this to none to clear up my attributes, and then set this to both again to make sure that they populate. Perfect. So let's just head back to our UCS and remove those commented sections now. There we go. And now what we can do is, when we come to obviously include more options and build more complexity onto our UCS, which obviously with every UCS we do over time, rather than having to copy and paste the same block of code out, what we can do is just use the function that's up at the top here. I really like to think of functions as just jigs on a workbench. If I go back to my days when I was setting out, if I'm going to drill an end panel to a set drill pattern for a runner system, I'm not going to measure that out every single time. I'm going to build a jig or a function and let it do the hard work for me next time. So if I start to just work through the rest of my code now, I'm just going to look through and see what else I've got. Now what I could do potentially with this, and I'm not going to do it for this UCS, but I think we might do it for one of the later ones, is instead of introducing the part and setting the properties, we could handle that a little bit like we're doing add connection to part edge, where we actually dim the part itself and pass some properties through a function. For now I'll leave it as it is. So if I just read through this code, what I'm doing is getting my filler side, which is saying whether I want my fillers applied to the left or right hand side or both. I'm then checking to make sure that this is a standard cabinet and the filler side is not 0, which is none. At that point I'm introducing a new connector name, or giving myself the option of selecting a connector name. And then I'm checking for my left or right hand side down here with the if statement, if filler side equals 1 or filler side equals 3. At that point I'm getting my left end object with this .find assembly, and if I just head back to the top, we're getting our left end string or right end string here. Again with this, the logic will return null occasionally if we're using something like an applied door, or we don't have the LU or RU object. So that's why we've got our null check in place here, and then an error message just to throw if we can't find our end panel type. I'm then setting up my left filler width, so I'm getting that, and we'll be adjusting that I think in the next episode or the one after. And then I'm dimming my component here. So I've got my left filler, and I'm doing this.createChild, and then setting the properties. I'm then applying a connection to that and using my function add connection to part edge, and then passing edge number 2, passing the component filler as well. If I just keep reading down here, you'll see that these two sections are essentially repeated over, just with the filler side set to 2 or 3 for the right hand side. We've got the same structure and same error message. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think the only thing that I'd probably change is the error message down here needs updating. But I think that's pretty good to continue. So hopefully you found this useful. Feel free to give us a like, share and subscribe. We're also on Facebook, that's facebook.com/thecabinetvisionguy, and Instagram as well, that's instagram.com/thecabinetvisionguy. Cheers!